The charity gala glittered under crystal chandeliers, filled with soft music, elegant dresses, and quiet conversations between influential guests. It was one of those nights where generosity met prestige, donors, celebrities, and media all gathered for a single cause, helping children who had lost their parents too soon. Steven Seagal arrived without fanfare. Dressed in a simple black suit, he moved through the crowd calmly, greeting a few familiar faces with a nod or a polite smile. He wasn't there for attention. He had agreed to attend because the charity reminded him of old friendships, people he had once shared laughs, struggles, and dreams with years ago. Across the hall, near the entrance, a woman stepped inside holding the hands of 3 little girls. They were triplets, barely 5 years old. The girls looked identical, wearing matching pastel dresses, their eyes wide with curiosity as they took in the glittering room. To them, this place felt like another world. Their mother leaned down, whispering gently, reminding them to stay close and behave. As they walked deeper into the hall, the music softened. Conversations flowed. Everything felt normal. Then suddenly, the triplets stopped. All 3 of them froze at the exact same moment. Their small fingers slowly lifted, pointing toward the center of the room. Steven Seagal. Their eyes lit up with excitement, recognition, and something deeper, something innocent and unfiltered. Before their mother could react, one of the girls whispered loudly, then another, then all 3 together shouted with pure certainty. "Daddy!" The sound echoed. Laughter stopped. Glasses paused midair. Heads turned. "Daddy! That's our daddy!" The room fell into complete silence. Steven turned, confused, following the direction of the sound. His eyes landed on the 3 little girls staring at him with absolute confidence, as if they had known him their entire lives. He looked around, thinking it must be a mistake. A misunderstanding. But the girls didn't hesitate. They pulled free from their mother's hands and took small steps forward, smiling, pointing again. "That's Daddy," one of them said softly. Whispers began spreading through the crowd. Cameras slowly lifted. Steven stood still, stunned, confused, and completely unaware that this moment was about to uncover a forgotten friendship, a painful loss, and an innocent misunderstanding that would touch every heart in the room. What no one knew yet was that this wasn't a scandal, it was a story of memory, loss, and childhood innocence. For a few long seconds, no one in the charity hall moved. The word "Daddy" still echoed in the air, hanging uncomfortably between the chandeliers and the stunned faces of the guests. Conversations had completely stopped. Even the soft background music seemed to fade into nothing. Steven Seagal remained where he was, his expression frozen between surprise and disbelief. He slowly looked around, expecting someone to laugh and say it was a joke, a misunderstanding that would clear itself in seconds. But no one laughed. No one spoke. The 3 little girls stood there confidently, their tiny hands still pointing toward him. Their faces were full of excitement, not fear. Not confusion. To them, this moment felt right. Their mother rushed forward immediately, panic flashing across her face. "No, no, girls," she whispered urgently, kneeling down to their level. "That's not." But the triplets gently shook their heads. "Yes it is," one of them said with certainty. "That's Daddy." Steven's heart tightened. He took a cautious step forward, keeping his voice soft and respectful. "I'm sorry," he said gently, lowering himself slightly so he wouldn't tower over them. "I think you might be mistaken." The girls looked at each other, then back at him. "We're not," another one said. "We see you with Daddy all the time." That sentence sent a ripple of murmurs through the crowd. People leaned closer. Phones discreetly rose into the air. Whispers spread like wildfire. "What do they mean? Did you hear that? They said they see him with their dad." Steven straightened slowly, his confusion deepening. He had never seen these children before. Not once. No memory. No connection. Yet there was something unsettling about their confidence. "I don't understand," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. The host of the gala stepped forward, clearly flustered, trying to keep control of the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. This seems to be a misunderstanding." But the tension didn't ease. The triplets pulled gently at their mother's hands, pointing again. "That's him," one whispered. "Daddy's friend." Steven's breath caught. Daddy's friend. The word stirred something faint and distant in his mind. Old memories of laughter, training sessions, shared meals, and photographs from long ago. Still, he shook his head slightly. "I'm sorry," he said again, calmly. "I don't know you. I would remember." The mother stood frozen, her eyes glistening. She looked torn between stopping the moment and allowing the truth to surface. Around them, the room buzzed with quiet speculation. Steven stood in the center of it all, not accused, not defensive, only confused. And slowly, painfully, everyone began to realize this wasn't a scandal. It was the beginning of a story that had been waiting 5 long years to be understood. Where are you watching from? Comment your country and city below. The silence inside the charity hall felt heavier by the second. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what they were witnessing. Some assumed there was a hidden story, others felt uncomfortable even thinking such things, especially with 3 innocent children standing in the middle of it all. Steven Seagal stayed exactly where he was. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't step away. He simply stood there, calm but visibly shaken, trying to understand how 3 little girls could look at him with such certainty. I promise you, he said gently, kneeling again so he was closer to their height, I am not your father. The triplets frowned, clearly confused by his words. But Daddy looks like you, one of them said softly. And Daddy's pictures always had you with him, another added. That was when the murmurs changed tone. Pictures? Did you hear that? They think he's their dad because of photos? Steven's chest tightened. Pictures with me? He repeated quietly. The girls nodded eagerly. Mommy has them, one said. Daddy and you. Always together. Steven looked toward their mother. She stood frozen near the edge of the crowd, her hands trembling slightly, as if the past had suddenly caught up with her in the most public place possible. Steven rose slowly and addressed her, his voice respectful and calm. He said, I think there's been a mistake. I truly don't recognize your children. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't interrupt. Around them, the crowd began to shift, not with judgment, but with curiosity and concern. The initial shock was fading, replaced by a quiet understanding that something deeper was unfolding. The host attempted to intervene again, but Steven gently raised his hand. It's okay, he said. They're just children. The girls clutched each other's hands, suddenly unsure. Their excitement faded into confusion. Why doesn't Daddy know us? One whispered. That single question pierced the room. Steven swallowed hard. He looked at the girls, then at their mother again, realizing this moment carried pain far beyond a simple misunderstanding. He knelt once more and spoke carefully. Sometimes, he said softly, children believe something because it makes sense to them. That doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means the story isn't finished yet. The mother finally stepped forward, her voice shaking. Steven? I think it's time. His eyes widened slightly. She knew his name. The crowd leaned in. 5 years of silence, grief, and unspoken history hovered in the air, and everyone could feel it. Do you think this is a misunderstanding or a hidden secret? Comment misunderstanding or secret. The mother took a slow step forward, her hands trembling as she gathered the courage to speak. The room, once filled with music and laughter, now felt like a quiet courtroom, except no one was there to judge anymore. Everyone was simply listening. I'm sorry, she began softly, her voice breaking. I never wanted this to happen like this. She looked down at the 3 little girls, then back at Steven. My husband, their father, she said carefully, was your friend. Steven's breath caught. Images flashed through his mind, training sessions, late-night conversations, old photographs taken years ago. A man he had once trusted. A man he had laughed with. A man he had lost touch with. He died, the woman continued, her voice barely above a whisper. In an accident. 5 years ago. A soft gasp moved through the crowd. The triplets squeezed each other's hands, sensing the heaviness of the moment even if they didn't fully understand it. He passed away before they were born, the mother said. They never met him. They only know him through stories and pictures. Steven slowly sat down in the nearest chair, the weight of her words settling in. I didn't even know, he murmured. She nodded. You didn't. And that's the truth. You didn't know he had a family. You didn't know I was pregnant. He died suddenly, and everything changed. The room was completely silent now. I kept his photos, she went on. Pictures of him smiling. Pictures of him with friends. And in many of those photos, you were there. Steven closed his eyes briefly. To them, she said, glancing at the girls, you became part of how they imagined their father. They saw you standing beside him in almost every picture. So in their minds, you belonged with him. The triplets looked up at Steven again. You were always with Daddy, one said quietly. Steven's eyes filled, though his voice remained steady. "I was his friend," he said softly. "He was a good man." "Yes," the mother replied. "He was." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I never told them you were their father," she said firmly. "They are only 5. They made their own understanding. To them, Dad was the man they saw next to their father in pictures." The crowd felt the shift. This wasn't scandal. This wasn't accusation. It was grief, filtered through childhood innocence. Steven stood slowly, emotion visible on his face. "I wish I had known," he said quietly. "I would have been there." The mother nodded, tears falling freely now. "I know." The triplets watched silently as the truth finally settled over the room, a truth built on loss, memory, and love. And for the first time, everyone understood. Steven stood there quietly for a long moment, as if the noise of the world had faded around him. The chandeliers above still glowed, the guests still stood watching, but his attention was entirely on the 3 small faces in front of him. 5 years. 5 years of a life he never knew existed. "I'm so sorry," Steven finally said, his voice low but steady. "I truly didn't know." No excuses. No defenses. Just honesty. He slowly knelt in front of the triplets, bringing himself down to their eye level. The crowd held its breath. "I'm not your daddy," he said gently, choosing each word with care. "But your father was someone I cared about very much." The girls studied his face, searching for the certainty they had felt moments earlier. One of them asked softly, "But you were with him, all the time?" Steven nodded. "Yes. We were friends. Very close friends." He placed his hand over his chest. "He talked about wanting a family someday. He was proud, even before you were born." The mother covered her mouth, overcome with emotion. Steven turned to her. "I wish I had been there. I wish I had known he left you alone." She shook her head gently. "You can't blame yourself. He never told anyone. He wanted to protect us until things were settled." Steven exhaled deeply, the weight of regret clear in his eyes. He looked back at the girls. "Your father loved you," he said softly. "Even if you never got to meet him. That love doesn't disappear." One of the girls stepped forward and hugged him without warning. Steven froze for half a second, then slowly wrapped his arms around her, careful, protective. The other 2 followed. A collective gasp moved through the room. Steven closed his eyes briefly, emotion finally breaking through his calm exterior. He held them as if honoring a promise he never knew he had missed. When he pulled back, he smiled gently. "You didn't do anything wrong," he told them. "You were just remembering him the only way you could." The girls nodded, comforted. Steven rose and addressed the room. "This is not a scandal," he said calmly. "This is a family that lost someone they loved." His voice carried authority, not fame, but compassion. "If my friend were here today," he continued, "he would want us to choose kindness over judgment." The crowd responded with quiet nods, some wiping away tears. The misunderstanding was no longer painful. It was healing. The room held its breath as Steven stepped back slightly, letting the 3 little girls cling to their mother. The initial shock of the gala had slowly faded into a tense curiosity. Guests leaned forward, waiting for the truth to be fully revealed. The mother took a deep breath and addressed everyone, her voice steady but emotional. "I want to be clear," she began. "Steven Seagal has never met our children before tonight. He does not know us personally." The crowd murmured quietly, realizing the misunderstanding was not intentional. Cameras still hovered, but now the focus had shifted from scandal to clarity. "Our girls," she continued, glancing at the triplets, "have grown up seeing pictures of their father, and Steven, who was a dear friend of his, is in many of those pictures. In their minds, the man in the photos who was always with their father became a symbol of Dad." Steven listened quietly, emotion flickering across his face. He nodded slowly, understanding now why the children had called him Daddy. "They were only 5 years old," the mother said softly, holding her daughters close. "They did not know him personally. They only knew him through photos and stories. They did not mean to accuse or confuse anyone. They were only innocent children, remembering in their own way." The triplets looked at Steven again, small hands entwined with their mothers. One whispered softly, "We just wanted to see Daddy." Steven's chest tightened. He knelt down once more, bringing himself gently to their level. "I understand," he said, his voice full of warmth. "You were only remembering him the way you could. That's okay." He smiled gently. "And now I know. I didn't know your father had a family. I wish I could have met you sooner." The girls' eyes widened. Their mother's hand rested on Steven's shoulder, nodding. "We know you didn't. That's why we never said anything before." The room began to exhale collectively. Guests whispered in admiration. Cameras no longer sought drama, they sought the heart of the story. This was not scandal. This was a story of loss, memory, and innocence. Steven stood fully, still smiling gently at the triplets. "I will make sure to honor your father's memory," he said. "And I promise to be here for you, in any way I can." The triplets squealed softly with delight, hugging him again, this time with trust and understanding rather than confusion. The gala hall, once tense, now buzzed with warmth and emotion. One of the reporters whispered, "This isn't a scandal at all, it's beautiful." Steven turned to the crowd and said, "Sometimes, life gives us unexpected lessons. Innocence can show us the depth of love and the importance of connection." The mother smiled through tears. "And sometimes children remind us of what truly matters: compassion, understanding, and family." If you believe children speak from pure hearts, type "pure heart" in the comments. The gala, which had begun with shock and confusion, ended with a sense of closure and hope. Guests clapped softly. The triplets giggled. Steven and the mother exchanged a respectful nod. A misunderstanding had been cleared, but the bond had just begun. The tension in the charity gala had completely shifted. What began as shock and confusion had transformed into understanding and warmth. The guests, who only moments ago had whispered and speculated, now looked on with quiet admiration, witnessing a story of innocence, friendship, and unexpected connections unfold. Steven Seagal stood beside the three little girls and their mother, his calm presence radiating reassurance. He smiled gently at the triplets, who clung to their mother but peeked at him with curious, trusting eyes. For a moment, the past and present seemed to collide, memories of a dear friend long gone intertwined with the innocence of children who had never met their father. He crouched once more, bringing himself to the girls' level. "I promise I will do everything I can to honor your father's memory," he said softly. "And I want you to know, even though I didn't know you existed before today, I care about you now." The triplets giggled softly and reached out for him. Their mother smiled through tears, her heart full of gratitude and relief. The room, filled with high-profile guests and media, seemed to hold its collective breath as Steven and the family shared that first, genuine moment of connection. Then Steven stood fully, addressing the gala attendees. His voice carried authority, humility, and warmth. "Life is full of moments we cannot control," he said. "But we can choose how we respond to them. Innocence, love, and understanding are what shape true family and community." Guests nodded quietly, some wiping away tears. The journalists, who had expected scandal and headlines, now recorded something far more meaningful, a story of compassion, integrity, and the unexpected ways life can bring people together. The mother stepped forward and added, "We wanted everyone to know the truth, that this was never meant to embarrass anyone." The girls only remembered the man who was always with their father. And now, thanks to Steven, they understand their father's friend, someone who cared deeply about him, is still here to honor that memory. Steven placed a gentle hand on the girls' shoulders. "From today on," he said, "I will do my best to be a part of your lives, as a friend of your father, and someone who cares about you both." The triplets cheered softly, hugging him again. The crowd responded with warm applause. Cameras flashed, but these photos would capture not scandal, but the beauty of connection, the innocence of childhood, and the power of empathy. The gala ended on a note of reflection and gratitude. Guests left inspired by the story they had witnessed. Steven and the family stayed behind for a few quiet moments, sharing laughter, smiles, and reassurance. The misunderstanding had dissolved, replaced by trust and a newfound bond. This evening had become more than a charity event. It had become a story about memory, friendship, and the pure heart of children. It reminded everyone present that sometimes life surprises us, and when it does, love, patience, and kindness are what matter most. If you believe that love, understanding, and compassion define real family, type family in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring, heartwarming stories like this one. The triplets waved goodbye, their smiles bright, their hearts full. Steven watched them go, knowing that although life had been unfair in the past, a new chapter of connection, care, and love had just begun.